to Jonathan Taylor. Huge hole. He's at the 30. He's going to go. 10, 5, touchdown. Jonathan Taylor made a man miss the line of scrimmage and then runs it into Pater. And a one-handed INT. Are you kidding me? Kenny Moore.
What a play by Nyheim Hines.
Horseshoe is back, baby. The horseshoe is back.
What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice Colts podcast. Guys, today I just wanted to take a few minutes and talk about Jacob Eason for a minute. I know Derek did a video a couple days ago about Eason's season. I kind of wanted to look at Jacob Eason and come of it from the perspective of he might play a couple games to start the season. Now, obviously, we don't know with the recovery. Maybe Wentz is out there week 1. Maybe he's out there week 2. Maybe he's out there till week 4 or 5. We don't really know the whole timetable with Carson Wentz. The timetable is 5 to 12 weeks. That's a very broad timetable for him. And so with that, I kind of wanted to look at Jacob Eason and kind of talk about, in my personal opinion, and again, this is my opinion. You guys can agree or disagree with it. What is Jacob Eason's ceiling and what is his floor? That's kind of what I wanted to talk about. I had a guy who asked me that earlier today on Twitter, and I was like, oh, that's a good topic of conversation. So I just wanted to start that conversation and talk about Jacob Eason's ceiling and his floor. So I thought we could start by looking back on Jacob Eason and his being drafted in the 4th round by Indianapolis. People were considering Jacob Eason in the pre-draft process anywhere from a late first to second round type of quarterback. I mean, and when we were doing kind of looking at all the quarterbacks, we were like, maybe the Colts can get lucky and Jacob Eason can be a later second round pick, maybe a 3rd round pick. Somehow, some way, he falls all the way to round number 4, right? And the biggest knock on Jacob Eason was obviously the accuracy on the run. That was a big thing, and just the footwork in general. Those are some things. Some people were also like, is he, they were questioning, I guess, his desire to play. Now, those concerns kind of faded as time went on, but Jacob Eason came in as a very raw but very talented type of player to Indianapolis. I mean, it got so crazy. There's been a lot of people, even some of my friends, who have been really, really high on Jacob Eason. And, even when Phillip Rivers retired, there was a lot of people, I don't want to say a lot of people, there was a select amount of people who were like, just roll with Jacob Eason. He's got the talent to be your franchise quarterback. Roll with him. I personally wasn't quite there. I thought the Colts needed to look outside the building to find a quarterback, but I still felt like Jacob Eason had a tremendous amount of talent. Now, Frank Reich and Chris Ballard have said as much, like kind of pump the brakes. As soon as Jacob Eason was drafted, they said, let's pump the brakes on this guy a little bit, right? I mean, he hasn't really hasn't had a lot of game action. He's got some issues. We all know that. We all seen that. And now, a year later, Jacob Eason's been in the system for a year. He's learned under Phillip Rivers, learned under Jacoby Brissett. He's had a year with Frank Reich in this offense. And now Carson Wentz goes out with this injury, and Jacob Eason all of a sudden is thrust into the number 1 quarterback spot, right? He's going from playing against the 2s and the 3s to playing against the 1s within 24 hours. That's a massive, massive jump for a guy like Jacob Eason. Massive jump. And that's why, like, when people were looking at week 1 and Jacob Eason from the 11-on-11s wasn't having the greatest kind of days statistically, I was kind of like, just pump the brakes on Jacob Eason a little bit, right? He's essentially a rookie quarterback. He played like 30-some snaps last year in training camp. So he hasn't had any kind of game action, any live bullets. He's essentially still a rookie quarterback. Give him some time to knock the rust off. Now, week 1 wasn't necessarily the best week for Jacob Eason, but I don't think that should have shocked anybody, right? Like I talked about, he's playing against the 1s now, and not just the 1s, a defense that by all stretches and what everybody has said is looking to be a top 10 defense again this year. Last year, they were a top 10 defense, and it seems like this pass rush has started to come alive for this defense. That's been the biggest concern with this Colts defense, was the edge rusher, and the Colts addressed it a lot. So Jacob Eason's going against a defense that's no joke. He's going against a really, really good defense, and he was struggling, and I really wasn't that shocked or concerned by that. But some people, I feel like, were kind of building it up like it was so bad, like it was catastrophic. And yeah, well, maybe Jacob Eason didn't have the greatest days. I was never really that concerned with Jacob Eason. And now it's looking like in week 2, he's starting to pick it up a little bit, right? He's starting to figure things out. Tuesday's practice, he looked a little bit better. Wednesday's practice, he looked exponentially better. A really nice rebound day for him. You also have to factor in that Jacob Eason is missing 3 of his starting offensive linemen, right? Throw Eric Fisher, we all knew was going to be out. You got Ryan Kelly, who's out for multiple weeks. Quentin Nelson, who may not even play the rest of the preseason. And then you got guys, man, who are just kind of figuring it out a little bit. You got some backup guys like Danny Pinter, like Chris Reed, who filled in yesterday for Quentin Nelson. And then you got other guys like Joey Hunt, who's still figuring it out at center. So it's going to just take some time with some of these guys. Now, fortunately for Jacob Eason, a lot of the skilled position guys are still out there day to day. So he's getting a lot of run with these guys. He's building that chemistry with these guys. And I think the question is, all right, now that Jacob Eason's kind of settling in, it seems like it's kind of slowing down for him a little bit. Obviously, he still has multiple weeks until the regular season. He has about 11 days until the first preseason game. Carolina comes to town next week for preseason and for some joint practices as well. So the question is, what is Jacob Eason's ceiling versus what is his floor? Now, I'll start with the floor. I think the floor is what we saw in week 1, right? The floor is Jacob Eason. We know he has a rocket arm. The floor is him just kind of making some dumb decisions, right? He's kind of a gunslinger type of quarterback anyhow, kind of in that Phillip Rivers mold a little bit. Obviously, the arm strength is more than Rivers was able to offer the Colts last year, but he's got that kind of gunslinger mentality. He's not afraid sometimes to throw the ball, maybe where he shouldn't sometimes, or try to fit it in some places that, honestly, Jacoby Brissett wouldn't have tried to do. And that can be very good and very bad, right? We know with, obviously, the most well-known guy is Brett Favre. And we know sometimes he made incredible throws and sometimes throws that you're just like, what in the world are you looking at? So I think the floor for me would be what we saw in week 1, just no chemistry amongst these guys. Jacob Eason as a young quarterback, getting flustered, throwing the ball where he shouldn't, and just really forgetting the things that he's learning, right? Kind of reverting back to kind of the knocks that we saw in him in college, right? I think that would be kind of the floor for Jacob Eason. If that's the case, maybe you look elsewhere. Maybe you look outside the building. I know a lot of people have talked about some of these outside guys. Nick Foles, I think, is the biggest name right now. I think right now, absolutely not. I would not go for that. But if Jacob Eason just looks completely terrible by, week 2, week 3, the preseason, maybe that's when you start considering that a little bit more strongly. But I think the ceiling now for a guy like Jacob Eason, and I'm just going to go based off of this season. I'm not going to talk about it career-wise because you don't know with him. I think he has a lot of potential career-wise. I think for this season, if he can come in and be a serviceable backup, be a game manager type of quarterback, I think that is a ceiling for him, and that's exactly what you ideally want him to do until Wentz comes back, whenever that is. That's kind of my expectation with him, and maybe he exceeds that expectation, but I think if he meets that expectation, that's kind of the ceiling I'm looking for Jacob Eason in year number 1 of actual action, because he's going to play against some decent defenses here to start the year. So it'll be really good. If he can just not make the dumb, boneheaded play that screws over this offense, if he can just be a game manager, make some plays when need be, but really rely on that run game and that Colts defense, I think the Colts will be just fine. But that's kind of my thoughts, guys, on Jacob Eason, the whole situation around him, and also his, in my opinion, floor versus ceiling. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Really appreciate all your support. It's been a couple rough days as Colts fans, but we are pushing through it. We're trying to have level-headed content. I know last night Derek just had to air some frustrations out, which I get that. It was a frustrating couple days, but seems like we're all now in a better place here. Seems like it was a good day of practice here on a Wednesday. And guys, Derek's going to come out. He's going to go on with somebody. I haven't determined yet who the guest is going to be, but he's going to recap day number 7 of training camp. Be on the lookout for that later today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Really appreciate all your support as always. And as always, go Colts.